If you would like to design and create your own budgets using Excel, then this short tutorial will show you how. The budget template will use many of Excel spreadsheets' commands, functions and routines, including the use of drop-down boxes to select data. We employ the SUMIF command and then retrieve data using the XLOOKUP function. We clear and solve errors by using the IFERROR command and formulate some nested if statements. And finally, we insert a chart and some infographics. The completed template is very easy to use and can be expanded and adapted to suit your business needs. And later on in this video, I will show you how to obtain a copy of the completed budgets template. I do hope you enjoy watching. Open up a new workbook and navigate to cell E3 and enter date. Move to F3 and enter bank. In G3 it's reference and in H3 it's value. Skip a column to J3 and enter budget. In K3 it's actual, and skip a column once again to M3 where you can enter variance. Whilst holding down the control key, select the ranges E3 through to H3, J3 through to K3 and M3. And whilst these are all highlighted, change the background colour to green, the font colour to white, increase the font size and make bold. Let's start to build our budget by entering our first transaction line. Enter a date in cell E4 and navigate to cell F4. For demonstration purposes, we will use either a bank account or a credit card account to identify the source of this first transaction line. We want the contents of F4 to read either bank or card. So with F4 still highlighted, select the data ribbon and from here choose the data validation tool. And from the allow field select list and in the source field type in bank followed by a comma and then card. And now click OK. A new drop-down box arrow appears to the right of cell F4, inviting you to choose either bank or card. Select bank. In the reference field G4, we want to select one of our income or expense types. So let's create a list of these. Select cell P4 and type in salary, and then copy in the next 8 lines as shown. Please do pause the video whilst you complete this. Let's give these a name. Highlight the range P4 through to P12 and from the formulas ribbon choose the define name tool. Enter the name reference and click OK. Navigate back to cell G4 and from the data ribbon pick the data validation tool. Select list from the allow field and in the source field enter equals reference and click OK. From the drop-down box choose salary and then in the value field of H4 enter the value 2369.00. Highlight the range F4 through to G4 and then copy and drag down the formulas to row 19. Then delete the values in the range F5 through to G19. We now have drop-down boxes in both columns for the entire data table range. Now pause the video whilst you enter in the data as shown for the next 10 lines. Please note that expenses have been recorded as negative numbers. Adjust your column widths such that all the cell contents are clearly visible. That's fine. We now have our transactions recorded. We now need to compare these transactions with our budgets. And to do this, we need to set up our budgeted income and budgeted expenditure for this period. Enter the values shown in the range Q4 through to Q12, noting that expenditures are once again recorded as negative numbers. Let's now calculate the cumulative or the running balances for each of these income and expenses types. To do this, we will use the SUMIF command. So navigate to cell R4 and enter in the following formula: equals SUMIF, open brackets, select the range G4 through to G19, then enter a comma, select the criteria field as P4 and then a comma, and then the sum range becomes H4 through to H19, and now close the brackets. Let's adjust this formula to lock in the reference range G4 through to G19 and the sum range H4 to H19. So, with cell R4 still active, navigate to the command bar and with your cursor select and highlight the text G4 through to G19 and hit the F4 function key on your keyboard. This places a $sign in front of each coordinate and effectively locks it in place. Do the same for the text H4 through to H19 and now press return. With the range coordinates now correctly fixed, copy down the formula in cell R4 through to cell R12. Note that these are cumulative totals. So, for instance, the value of sport has added up both the transaction lines in the data table that contain the reference sport. Now that we have our budgets entered and our cumulative values calculated, we can populate the cells J4 and K4. We want the value in J4 to be the budget for the data entry in the reference field G4. We can use the XLOOKUP function to achieve this. The XLOOKUP command that we want will call from data from columns P, Q and R. So, firstly, let's give these columns the headings of reference, budget and actual. Now, give the range Q4 through to Q12 a name. So, with Q4 through to Q12 highlighted, select the Define Name tool from the Formulas ribbon and enter a name of Budget and click OK to save. Now, with R4 to R12 highlighted, use the Define Name command again using the name Actual. You will recall that the range P4 through to P12 has previously been named Reference. Before we move on to the next section, let's have a quick tidy up. Select the range E4 through to H19 and from the Borders tool select All Borders. Do the same for the ranges J4 through to K19, M4 through to M19 and P4 through to P12. Now from the Page Layout ribbon, uncheck the View Grid Lines box. Now select cell M3 and from the Home ribbon, pick up the Format Painter tool and apply M3's formatting to the range P3 through to R3. OK, that looks a bit tidier. Let's now continue building our budget. Our budget values and actual values in columns J and K will populate depending on the reference value in column G. So, the first transaction line in column G is the reference salary in cell G4. We want a formula in J4 and K4 that looks up the entry in G4 and then picks up the corresponding entry in the table P4 through to R4. Navigate to cell J4 and enter in the formula equals XLOOKUP, open brackets, point to cell G4, then enter a comma, then enter the name reference, then a comma, and then the name budget, and now close the brackets. This correctly retrieves the budget of 2450 for the income type of salary. Do the same for the formula in K4, which becomes equals XLOOKUP, open brackets, point to G4, enter a comma, then the name reference, followed by a comma, and then the name actual, and close the brackets. This correctly retrieves the cumulative value of 2369 of the income type salary. Now that we have the formulas in J4 and K4, we can simply copy and drag down these formulas to the end of the current range. As you will see, this works fine for all instances where there is a valid entry in the reference column G. But if there is no value in column G, then Excel returns the NA error message in the corresponding budget and actual cells. We can solve this problem quite easily by using Excel's error handling formula IFERROR. So select cell J4 and in the formulas bar enter the command IFERROR immediately after the equal sign and before the X of XLOOKUP. Then insert an open bracket. Now navigate to the end of the formula and enter a comma followed by two inverted commas and then enter a final closing bracket. Do the same for the formula in K4, which now includes the IFERROR open brackets command after the initial equal sign, and then at the end of the formula enter in a comma followed by two inverted commas and now enter a final closing bracket and save. With both J4 and K4 selected, copy and drag down the new formulas to the end of the range. Hopefully the NA errors will now disappear. So we can now move on to analysing the differences between our budget and our actual values. The difference between our cumulative actual values and our budget values is called the variance, and this can be easily calculated by subtracting one from the other. Now, variances are either favourable, that is where either the income is greater than the budget or expenses are less than the budget, or they are adverse, and that is when income is less than budgeted or expenses are greater than budgeted. So our formula in M4 is simply plus the actual value in K4 less the budget value in J4. The formula correctly returns a negative or adverse variance of -81. Copy and drag this formula down to the end of the range. Once again, we get an error message in the last 4 lines, where there is not a value in the corresponding reference in column G. Select cell M4 again, and in the formula bar, enter in the IFERROR command. So, after the first equal sign, enter IFERROR open brackets, then navigate to the end of the formula and enter a comma, then inverted comma, and then a closing bracket. Now copy and drag down to the end of the range and hopefully the error messages will disappear. That's great. Each variance in column M correctly calculates the cumulative variances for each reference value in the transaction table. In the next section, we will enter our opening bank and card balances for the period. We will then calculate our running bank and credit card receipts and payments, and from this we can then calculate our closing bank and card balances. Select cells B3 and C3, and from the Home ribbon, click the Merge and Center tool and enter the text Bank Account. We will apply a background colour of green and a font colour of white and make bold. In the cells B4 through to B7, enter in the following text. In B4 it's Start, then Income, then Expenses, and finally End. And now, with the range B4 to B7 highlighted, choose a font colour of green and indent the text one to the right. Now highlight the range B4 through to C7 and from the Borders tool select All Borders. Now highlight the range B3 through to C7 and click on the Copy command. Navigate to cell B9 and click on the Paste command. We now have a second analysis box. Go to cell B9 and change the contents to read Credit Card. In cell C4, enter the value 500. This is our opening or starting bank account balance. In cell C5, we now need to record all instances in our transaction table where the bank field equals bank and the value field contains a receipt or a positive value. To achieve this, we need to firstly isolate and select all instances in the range F4 through to F19 where the narrative equals bank. Then, from this selection, we want to isolate only the positive values in the value range of H4 through to H19. Navigate to cell I3 and from the Home ribbon, select the Insert tool and then the Insert Column option. Click this once to add an additional column to our worksheet. And in cell I3, type in the text Bank followed by a plus sign. With cell I4 selected, we can now enter an if statement that firstly looks for the word bank in the corresponding line for column F and then looks in column H for a positive value. If both these conditions are satisfied, then our if statement will return the positive value in cell H4. If not, the if statement will return a 0. So, select cell I4 and enter in the following formula. Equals if, open brackets, the word and, then another open brackets, point to cell F4, then equals, and then the word bank in inverted commas, followed by a comma, then point to cell H4, and then greater than 0, close the brackets, then a comma, then point to cell H4, followed by a comma, followed by a 0, and finally close the brackets and press return. Hopefully, your formula will return the positive value of 2369. Now copy and drag this formula down to I19, such that the formula is applied to each transaction line. Now return to cell C5. The formula here simply adds up all the values in column I. The formula is equals sum, open brackets, select the range I4 through to I19, close the brackets, and then press return. Check that the total is in fact the values 2369, 463 and 25 added up to equal 2857. We can use the same nested if command to calculate the bank expenses and both the card income and the card expenses. Firstly, we'll do the bank expenses. Select cell J3 and insert a column, and in J4 enter the nested if command as shown, and then copy and drag this down to cell J19. Then in cell C6 enter the sum command as shown. Select K3 and once again insert a new column, and by using the same techniques as before, apply the formulas shown to achieve the values for total income. And finally, select L3 and repeat the process using the formulas shown to complete the value for total expenses. Now that we have these income and expense values correctly calculated, we can hide columns I through to column L. Simply highlight these columns, right-click your mouse and select Hide from the menu bar that opens. The columns are still active but are now hidden from view. Let's complete the bank and card balances. Select cell C7 and we will add up the starting balances and the income received less the expenses paid to leave our ending or our cumulative bank balance. The formula is simply equals sum, open brackets, and then select the range C4 through to C6 and close the bracket. Enter an opening balance of 0 in cell C10 and then navigate to cell C13 and enter in the command equals sum, open brackets, and select the range C10 through to C12 and close the brackets. Press return. Okay, that's most of the work done. Let's now quickly tidy up our worksheet. Select all of the number ranges by holding down your control key and then selecting the range C4 through to C7, C10 through to C13, H4 through to Q19 and U4 through to V13. Right-click your mouse and from the menus bar select the Format Cells option. From the Numbers tab, select Number, choose 2 decimal places and the 1000 comma separator checked, and finally negative numbers to show as red, preceded by a minus sign. Adjust the various column widths to make sure that the contents of all cells are clearly visible. In this final section, we will add a couple of dashboard-style infographics to our worksheet. We would like a simple graphic in the variance field to denote a positive or a negative variance. Select cell Q4 and from the Home ribbon, pick up the Conditional Formatting tool. Select the Icon Sets option and then click on the More Rules option at the foot of the Icon Sets menu bar. From the Icon Style drop-down box, choose a style to your liking. Then, in the Type boxes on the right-hand side, change the option to number. The value boxes alongside should change to 0. And now click OK. Your icon appears correctly, denoting an adverse or negative variance. Use the Format Painter to apply this conditional formatting for the entire variance range from Q4 through to Q19. Now let's create a simple chart or a graph to simply display the cumulative budget values and the cumulative actual values. Select cell T14 and enter Income. Select cell T15 and enter Expenses. In cell U14, enter the formula plus U4 plus U5 to add up both our income types of salaries and other income. In cell U5, add up the expenses in the range U6 through to U12. And the formula has to be a positive value. So the formula becomes minus sum, open brackets, select the range U6 through to U12 and close the brackets. Press return. Now select the range U14 through to U15 and drag it and copy it one to the right to replicate the formulas into the range V14 to V15. Highlight the cell B9 and use the Format Painter tool to copy the formats into cell B15 and change the narrative to read Budget versus Actual. Now select the range T14 through to V15 and from the Insert ribbon pick up the Recommended Charts tool. I'm going to use a clustered bar chart, so select this option and click OK. There are lots of elements to this chart that I do not want, so click on the chart title. The chart title text box becomes active. Now simply hit the delete key on your keyboard. The chart title disappears. Repeat this process to delete the horizontal values axis. Delete also the data series, and then finally delete the vertical measurement bars. Click on either of the orange bars denoting our expenses and right-click your mouse. Select the Fill option from the top dialog box that opens and choose the light orange colour. Now click on either of the blue bars denoting our incomes and again right-click your mouse and select the light green fill colour. Finally, resize the chart and move it into the space directly below our Budget versus Actual heading in the bottom left-hand corner, so that it correctly aligns to the top and bottom of the worksheet. Please fully test all the functions and formulas to ensure that they work correctly. And that completes our budgeting spreadsheet. You now have a fully functioning tool that you can expand and adapt to suit your individual requirements. We do hope that you enjoyed watching our budgeting video and that there was lots of content that you found both useful and informative. Now, if you would like us to send you a copy of the final template, then all we ask is that you subscribe to our channel and give this video a big thumbs up. So, to get your copy of the completed file, please like or follow and message us on either Facebook, Instagram or Twitter. Thank you once again for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, then why not view our accounting spreadsheet video, where we will show you how to create a bookkeeping system for your business. Alternatively, take a look at our popular How to Keep Inventory in Excel video. Many thanks once again for your attention and Oh yes, please do subscribe to our channel.